Guys, there's a lot of stuff out there you need to focus on to have a healthy and successful business. But if you focus on these big three, you're going to crush it. Hey guys, Pete here, HVAC Greatness. So wanted to bring you back in and talk about a few things. I know that we're in this transitional period right now, and the time of this recording, we've had that situation over in Israel with the Hamas group and all this stuff that's going on. Not sure how this is going to age, but there's a good probability that this is going to leak over into other parts of the world, our part of the world maybe. You know what, AR. Don't want to mess up the algorithm. And I really don't want to go down that path, although these are important topics, very important topics. But what we're focused on here is how do we succeed during the current times, right, and the future times that are coming. And we know that there's some things that we really, really have to focus on. Historically, there has been stuff that's put out there for us as metrics, right? They call these, in any industry, they call them a key performance indicators. And a key performance indicator is how do you measure up against other successful businesses that are in the same business as you in terms of these different categories. And there's a lot of them, and I'm just going to look over my notes here. Anything to do with booking appointments. So when you have a lead that comes in, it doesn't necessarily become an appointment until you have somebody in place that's trained to make sure that that happens, right? And so that requires training, and you can measure this, what your booking rate is, what your no-show rate is or cancellation rates, stuff like that, a bunch of stuff like that. And then within your operations, there's things that you're going to want to measure. What is your efficiency of your different areas? Let's say technicians. What percentage of the hours that you pay them every year, what percentage goes actually towards applied billing time? I think you'd be surprised by that. What about installation? What percentage of that the installer's time is actually applied to the job, right? And they're actually working. And you'd be surprised at that as well. So a lot of different things that we want to be measuring, callbacks, was it fixed right the first time type stuff, and things of this nature. But what we're talking about is more into the sales and marketing side, and especially marketing. Now in sales, you have cost per leads, you have closing ratio. Closing ratio a lot of times depends on the source of the marketing, where you advertise, right? If you advertise in one area, it tends to do better in other areas, and there's a reason for that. We'll get to that into that in just a minute. What is your average ticket, right, on a replacement system? What is it on service? And what is your percentage? This is a good one now. I don't think this is out there, but what is your percentage of calls that are repairs versus replacement? Now, we've seen the industry really push towards replacement. Why? There's much more money in replacement than there is in repairs. And if you are seeing things change and push back the other way, well, start paying attention, because we're going to have to make some lemonade out of that situation, guys, because it's going to change. It's here to change. A lot more people are going to elect to repair over replace. There'll still be plenty of replacements, but as things change and as the world around us changes, customer buying patterns are going to as well. Marketing. What is your cost per customer acquisition? That factors in the leads and your closing ratio, if you know that. Lead generation, your websites, stuff like this. Let me see here. If you're doing social media marketing or email marketing, things like this, you can measure those metrics as well. And then there's the financials. What are your gross profit, your GP margins in installation department? What is it in the service department, right? What is the net profits? What do those look like? And then, company-wide as well. What is that mix? What are your operating expenses, your overhead as well? how fast are you growing, or worse yet, attritioning, and your cash flow and things of this nature. So there's a lot of different things, but the three that I want to focus on, and I think you should be focused on, is number one, your marketing. And I want you to hear me on this. When we're talking marketing, that goes way beyond advertising. Advertising and marketing have been used interchangeably, and they don't mean the same thing, at least not anymore. When you give a customer experience, and let's say your technician is in the customer's home, and they have this system that they follow, and you know the things like putting on your shoe covers, or getting the customer involved in the process, and asking them open-ended questions to get them to talk about some of the things. There's processes that when your service techs leave, the customer they have a feeling that they are left with. And we call that the old warm and fuzzy. The better the warm and fuzzy, the better the customer experience, and the better they associate the importance of continuing to work with you. And during a time when money is going to get worse and get more and more sensitive, turn this little fan on here. There we go. During that time, your relationship with your customers are everything. So internal marketing is extremely important, guys. Very important. But when we pull away and we look at the big picture, most business owners, at least in the beginning, they don't understand this. There are different types of customers out there, okay? There's those who are more focused on value, on how much it costs, and there's others who have a little bit more experience, and they tend to focus more on verifying that you're not one of those types of companies that they've been burnt by before. They want to make sure that you're a good fit for them. You're a good company. And the metrics a lot of times are how long have you been in business, how big is your company, things like this. But once we start to realize that there are different customer types and that we don't want them all, we start to realize that the feedback that we've been getting from customers may not be accurate at all. It may be some type of an attempt to influence you. Let's say, for example, you keep hearing your price is too high. And if you're hearing that a lot, this is usually a good indicator that, number one, you haven't raised the perceived value. This is all marketing internally as well as externally. But I'm trying not to be too excuse me, I'm trying to get dialed in on this in a way that it just doesn't go over the heads of some of you newer guys. Because let me just say this, when I started my business, I did some of the best work in town, and I knew all I had to do was get in there and show them what I could do, and they would call me back. And that was really true, especially in some of the commercial work that I did. I did a lot of light commercial and commercial refrigeration when I first started. And those types of customers, they have a lot of equipment, and they've had a lot of bad people work on it, and they don't want just anybody working on it. And once I showed them what I was capable of doing, I was in. My work spoke for itself. And on the retail side, I think that a lot of us think that that's going to work the same way on that side, but it just doesn't work, okay? It's just not the same. And so those customers that are all nice and friendly to you are generally, there's some good people out there, don't get me wrong, but that's generally motivated by trying to keep you happy. So number one, you do a good job, and number two, you give them a good price, right? You don't take advantage of them. I like this customer, I'm going to take care of them. And so that's a little bit of their strategy. A lot of it's just not even conscious that they're doing that, but that's part of it. And so what you need to understand is you don't want every customer. And once you understand that, and you realize that if you keep having these pricing conversations all the time, it's because you are attracting the wrong kind of customers. And you can take control of that regardless of your market. Every market has people, even if they don't have a lot of money, they'll finance in order to get it done right. Right? They understand that this is their home. They understand that there's it's an investment that is it needs to be done right. And we know that, but a lot of people assume that the customers do, and in most cases they just don't. They tend to look at us at home services through the same measuring glass as a home product, right? The quality. You know, you can buy any brand pretty much in the United States and it's going to perform, right? Because of the manufacturing standards in the United States, UL listings and the like, right? So there's a lot of tests that these manufacturers have to go through, so that's just pretty good. Well, you know, the service industry in that way, you've seen some of the crap that goes in, right? But the homeowner doesn't know that it blows cold air, right? He did a good job. And so a really crappy installation, the company that does that, let's say they left contaminants in the system and it doesn't surface until years later when they lose a compressor that's still under warranty, and it never should have happened. All they had to do was pull a decent vacuum or clean out that line set or replace that line set or put in, you know, the appropriate filter dryer in there, or, you know, purge with nitrogen when they were brazing in, or, you know, just a host of different things. Apply it right, check the static pressure, all the different things that should have been done right. It'll work. The customer's all happy because they saved $1,000, and then until later, and it fails, and of course they'll blame it on the equipment. Probably, equipment gets a lot of blame for stuff that our peers are really responsible for. So, if you focus on your marketing, and we'll go into that pretty deep, and understand that you don't want every customer, and that people buy. That we sell logic here, okay? They buy emotional. People buy for emotional reasons and they justify with logical reasons. You've heard me say that before. And understanding that, what kind of customers are out there, what kind of emotions they tend to have, both positive and negative. There's certain key metrics that we measure in the HVAC Greatness program, and so that we can identify a specific customer avatar. You know, the best customers, the type of customers we want more of. And that if we appeal to them, simultaneously we repel a lot of people who just want a low price, which is a very smart thing to do. And it's a little intimidating because it's you realize that you're not attracting everybody. And I think at first we think we want everybody. We want every customer. But if you get your marketing dialed in to the point where you literally have a marketing strategy, and a strategy is something you begin with, and from that you come up with a company identity. We tend to do it backwards. We come up with a company name, and then that's our identity, and we'll put some cool slogan on there that makes sense to us, and then we're going to go try to build a strategy with that, and it is not nearly as effective. So we also have to look at the financials. And right now, I think more than ever, we need to probably revisit what our true costs are and get skinny. I've seen, because I've been in other countries, where this is going to go if it continues to move in this direction. And if you don't have a strategy, first of all, that's going to keep you out of harm's way, that's step number one. But step number two is we have to revisit our numbers, and we have to get leaner than we ever have, because when we look at the KPIs, you know, the old school numbers were 30% of total revenues would equate to your overhead, you know, on a blended company, right? Now we're seeing that we probably need to be closer to 20%, okay? And if you can get leaner than that, all the better. And I know when you're small you can, but then you have some other hidden costs in your financials that make you think you can charge less, then you end up getting bit in the long run. You don't realize why you don't have any money, okay? So the financials are very important. We've got to get that overhead in check. we've got to know how to make sure that those numbers are always taken care of and utilize those and have a good strategy on how to charge for our services. And most business owners quickly understand that there's a direct correlation between what it costs me to do the job and how much I need to charge for it. Duh. But what they don't see a lot of time is consumer value varies independent of what it costs you. They'll look you in the eye and say, I don't care what it costs you. I'm not paying $250 for you to put a wire nut on my unit. That's highway robbery. And so that's what they see. Why? Because they are consumers. They don't understand what it costs to run a service business. They don't understand it may cost you $300 just to pull up in the driveway. They don't know that. I'm not saying that that's what it costs you. It may cost you significantly less, and may cost you more. It just depends on things. But there's a value correlation there that allows you to make more margins in some things, like a new system, and less margins in others, like these smaller repairs or preventive maintenance, because of what's been established out there, right? Duct cleaning is another one. There's a disconnect with the customers, and they don't value it. So we have to learn to build that value, and this is why certain departments are more profitable than others, right? And so that's what we have to look at. So we've got some new KPIs that are on the horizon for some new times. KPIs, again, they're key performance indicators. These are metrics, what I talked about at the very beginning. What is your closing ratio? What is your efficiency with your technicians? What is the callback rate, et cetera, and so forth. There's all these different things. But on the financials side, we're going to see some adjustments on that. So we've talked about the value. We've talked about what it costs to actually do the services. And then I didn't mention loss leaders. A lot of businesses will do, let's say, their maintenance programs at break even and sometimes lose money because they need that relation. They understand the value of the relationship and keeping that customer in place. Okay. So those are the big two for the externalization of your business. The third one is internal, and that, of course, is mindset. I talked about this. I was talking to a young man the other day, and he was stuck in analysis paralysis. Right? He's getting all this advice from all these different people, and he wants to please everybody, and instead of having the ability to step away and assess it, even assess where the advice is coming from, the young man was overwhelmed, and he just didn't know which way to go. Okay. And it's easy from the outside to point people in the right direction, but when you're the person that's in that situation, it can be pretty frustrating. And there's a reason for this, and the reason is you've never been taught to be an independent, to be self-employed, let alone an entrepreneur, which is another level. And so when you grow up with a family, with structure, with school and everything else, you're dependent, and people tell you what your schedule is going to be like for school or for work, right? And people tell you what to do and how to stay productive so that you make enough money for the company, for example, and you can keep your job, right? You're doing you're handling that. You're the cog in that particular wheel, and you're working well. But that transition from being an employee to being self-employed is kind of overwhelming. Now I've got all these decisions to make, and I don't know what to do. So now we've gone from dependent to being independent, and this can be overwhelming. I know one of the big things for me was I got on speed dial, my cell phone back when I had my business, every technical support number for every brand that I worked on, be it refrigeration or air conditioning, so that I could call and get some help if I needed some help, because I was a pretty young technician. I was only 26, I think, when I started my business. And so I had some experience, but not that much. Enough. Obviously, I had my license and started my business, but I learned a whole lot more when I was running the business. And so it was nice to have those resources. So part of part of what that means is once I started learning how to use those resources, I started making decisions better, and I would make decisions for the company. I would, right, wrong, or indifferent, I'd say, here's what we're going to do. If I didn't like the company policy, I'd just make a new company policy on the fly. This is the way we're going to do things. Made a lot of mistakes. But ultimately, I departed from being dependent to being independent. And many of you listening have done that as well. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road. I work with contractors every day, and they just have had enough success at being independent. That's what they come to lean on, and therefore their own hard-headedness and limiting perspectives and insights are their own worst enemy. In other words, they're not depending on other people that are better than them in certain categories, and they should be. And we call this interdependence. Now, this is your next level, okay? So we've got to break the dependency on others, become independent, and realize if it's going to happen, it's up to me, and get out there and do the hustle, right? Phone isn't ringing, you go get some business cards, and everybody gets a business card, right? You get on social media, you get in front of that camera, you start talking, you start making stuff happen. You got to do it, right? That's otherwise you're not going to eat. When you start to understand that, and you get a little bit of that fire underneath you, that starts to happen. Well, once you're ready, you're going to quickly get overwhelmed and realize, I can't do all this stuff myself. I need some help. And most people go right for, well, I just need to hire somebody and get somebody with some experience, and I'll be able to get out of the truck and do more running the business. Yeah, right. Good luck with that. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's where we want to go, but it doesn't work quite like that. And many of you listening can probably relate to that. The more people I hired, the more babies I had to sit. You know, I felt like a nanny at the babysitter dealing with all these employees. No disrespect against them, but that's just the way it was. They were all men, they were all adults, but it was difficult. Nobody could think for themselves. Hey Pete, hey Pete, hey Pete, hey Pete. My saying used to be, they made me feel like a genius because of the constant questions of what do I do, how do I do, and so on and so forth. I wasn't a genius. I was just working from up here instead of externalizing in the processes and giving them to my people, giving them steps to follow. That's another thing. But the step of being interdependent means that you hire a salesperson to sell who's better at sales than you. It may mean that you hire an accountant to help you really get into your financials and get departmentalized properly, or at least a financial advisor from a heating and air conditioning specialist particularly. You should be hiring some marketing assistants, but not what you think. I don't know if you realize this, but a lot of the marketing companies out there, they know how to optimize your website. They know how to manage all of your advertising campaigns out there. They know how to do a lot of that stuff, but you're the one that needs to come up with a strategy. They don't do strategy other than price. You need to run a special. You need to put a discount. You need to have a rebate. You need to do this. You need to do that. But a strategy is much deeper than that. Get a strategist coach. That's what HVAC greatness is. It's a marketing strategy, not from the outside only, from the inside, the internal processes. This is what keeps your sales going through, getting approved. This is what keeps your technicians coming back. This is what keeps your average tickets up. All this internal stuff that you're doing is the fulfillment of the promise that you made on the outside. And oh, by the way, what is that promise? Bob's Heating and Air, Pete's Heating and Air. What does that do? Nothing against Bob's out there or other Pete's. Pete's Heating and Air. Why should you call Pete? Well, maybe he's cheaper because he sounds like a small company. Well, what kind of customer am I attracting now? Okay, versus certified heat pump heating and air, right? So if you got a heat pump, get a certified specialist on it. Now we're talking a product specialist that cheap people aren't going to try to do business with, but people who have a heat pump and they want it done right, they're going to give that company a call perhaps. Okay. Now that's product, but there's other things, and this gets into your customer analysis. This is your strategy that you have to decipher and and put together marketing messages that speak to these different emotional areas that are non-product and they're non-price. Everybody speaks to price because they don't know what other metrics to measure, because they're consumers and that's how they buy products, but they don't realize that on services, it's just not the same, as we illustrated early on. So being interdependent means hiring coaches, getting training, right? Hiring a financial person, make sure you have an attorney, right? Don't go try to write up your own contract on, using, Chat GPT or something like that. You get yourself in some trouble. I mean, there's some pretty good stuff out there, don't get me wrong. And I think that you probably should be using some of that technology, but just don't think, for example, you're going to do marketing on that. That stuff doesn't know how to do marketing, not beyond what's been done. It's not a strategist, let's put it that way. There's no strategy in that. Well, there's one strategy. It's the same old one that's been broken for many, many years. And so if you really want to raise your game, what this is going to do is it raises your overall perception, and you attract a higher end customers. Guess what else you hire? Guess what else you attract? You attract high end employees, because they're consumers too. Okay, they're attracted to this similar stuff. If you really want to grow a business and be positioned to scale it, in other words, get from that 1, 2, 3 man size up to that next size, or better yet, let's say that you're at that size between six people and 12 to 15, and you're stuck and it's a madhouse and everything else. If you don't have a killer brand, and I'm not saying just go over to that one big wrap company out there and just get a new wrap that looks shiny and fancy. That's going to help you. But what if you held off on that and you came in and did a really, really effective strategy that's going to be economy proof with everything that's coming, and you built a strategy around that, and then you built a brand identity around that, and your wrap communicated that, and it was highly professional and clean. We're talking a whole nother level. That's what it's about, and that's what we've been talking about. So what are the 3 secrets to HVAC business success? Number 1 is your marketing is 360 degrees. It's everywhere. It's a strategy. It's part of your mission, part of your vision for your team. It's a culture, and it's all of these things that the customers just love. And I mean, they really do love. They don't just say this to get a better price or to get you to do a good job. They truly recommend you to their friends and family and everything else. And so that's what true marketing is. It starts with a strategy. Now, number 2 is the financials. We have to get really lean going into future times. You're going to have to make investments in security for your vehicles. I talked about that earlier today, where they've got ways that they know exactly where to drill your door, where they can pop your door right open. You're going to have to put some extra security on there. Times are getting tougher. Crime rate's going to go up, and they're going to target those nice trucks with all those expensive tools in them. So financially, we have to make wise investments, understand our overhead, understand our risk, figure out how to charge our services, not just based on what it costs, but also based on the value and whatnot. And then the mindset. The mindset is, it goes beyond what I just explained clearly, but at the fundamental level, you've got to get out of dependence into independence, and as quickly as possible out of independence into interdependence, and understand you are a professional and you deserve to get paid what you're worth. And you're never going to rise to that level until you appreciate other professionals and you pay them what they're worth in order to take your business to another level. That's a scary thing. Everybody's looking for a cheaper way to do it. And there's an old saying, you get what you pay for, but I like it the way my grandpa said it. Either way you go, you get your money's worth. Something to think about. Pete Ramsey here, HVAC Greatness. You guys take care, and I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.